Okay, while we've been killing time, we passed time, so we're going to get going. Can I ask everybody to sit down, please? Our visitors have been sitting. It's just the rest of us that have been busy. Oh, I got to get rid of this. I don't even want to. As long as I have this thing here, it's going to be... This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 2 to 8 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make oral submissions today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 150 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 210 days for an official plan amendment. A comment sheet is available at the door for anyone wishing to submit written comments on these amendments or to sign up to speak. And if anybody around the table has any motions on any of the items listed today that we don't have before us, please submit them as soon as you can so that staff have an opportunity to look at them, that the delegates in the audience have the ability to see them and know them, and the applicants as well. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No? Confirmation of minutes from February 28th, 2019. I hope you enjoyed the little sabbatical from planning. Carried? Okay, item number 1, we're having a presentation on that, and that is our Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Development Department 2018 year-end report. We'll hold that item. Second item we're holding, we have speakers on the zoning bylaw amendment 3930 and 3960 Riverside Drive. So that will be held. And number 3, we have a motion of deferral. Vice Chair Tierney.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Where the applicant requested zoning bylaw amendment 10 for the Oblades Avenue 175A Main Street is unable to attend the meeting due to some personal circumstances. It's requested deferral item to the next Planning Committee meeting, therefore be resolved that it be deferred to April 11th, 2019's Planning Committee.
So, I know that yesterday afternoon we found out about the relationship illness that is causing the motion to defer for one meeting length, so until April the 11th, I think it is. I asked our committee coordinator, Ms. Duffany, to reach out to anyone who had registered, and she did reach the people at that point that had registered. So if there's other people in the audience that are here to speak to, and she did get in touch with Councillor Menard as well, and he and I spoke yesterday afternoon. If there is anyone here to that was not aware that we would be moving the deferral, and again, I apologize because we only found out about the circumstances yesterday afternoon. The item is zoning bylaw amendment 10 Oblats Avenue and 175A Main Street. So I'm going to go through the list of speakers that we have registered, and we'll start from there. Heather Jarrett, Peter Tobin, Karen Dufton, Ron Rose, you did a good job so far. John Dance, Phyllis Odenbach Sutton, Paul Goodkey. I haven't seen Paul. No. Now we have a new sign up, Camrose Burden. Okay. So Camrose, then we have the applicant, which of course they're aware because it was them that asked for the deferral. Pardon? Peter Tobin? Oh, sorry, I didn't see you put your hand up. So with a motion to defer, which is the item that's before us now, if you wish to speak, it's to deferral. It's not to anything else. And I know that Councillor Menard asked for my assurance yesterday that it would be deferred. As a new dad of a couple of weeks old baby, he said, if I don't have to come in and I'm sure it's not going to be on the, we're not going to be discussing it, please let me know. So So you don't need to speak to deferral, either of you? Oh, sorry. So the motion before us, the motion is to defer this item until April the 11th, which is the next meeting of Planning Committee. And so if anyone wants to speak to it, we're actually speaking to why you disagree with that motion to defer.
I won't be here. I'll be out of the country on the 11th.
But you can submit written comments if you haven't already. A lot of people, like I know on several of the items we have before us, we have a lot of people that have submitted written comments because they're either working, still down south, out of the country, having babies, whatever. I don't know whether that's one of the ones that came up today, but there are reasons. And I'll tell you that we do, our committee coordinator makes sure that we all have that information, and as we read the reports, we're reading your submissions as well. Oh, tell me about it. I got 2 right now that I'm looking after for 6 nights, and I get it. 9 grandchildren, there's barely a night goes by that I'm not doing something. Okay, so on the motion to defer, and the applicant doesn't need to speak to the motion to defer. Anybody that's here, Kelly? Okay, thank you. So on the motion to defer until April the 11th, the oblates, carried? Carried, thank you. Right. The next one is in Alta Vista Ward. It's zoning bylaw amendment for 2723 Lancaster Road. I have, if needed, Tim Chatters here for J.L. Richards and Marcel Deneme. Does anyone have any questions on the zoning bylaw amendment for 2723 Lancaster Road? And Mr. Chatter and Mr. Deneme, you don't need to speak if we don't have any questions. Okay, and no one else has signed up. So on this item, is it carried? Thank you. The next item, number 5, is the zoning bylaw amendment. What number is that?
Number 6. Next one, after this.
Are they against it?
Yes.
Zoning bylaw amendment, 380 Rolling Meadows Crescent. It's in Councillor Dudas's ward. I have no one here to speak on it at all. Does anyone have any questions? Is this item carried? Thank you. Thank you. Number 6 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 5331 Fernbank Road. We have, if needed, Carl Fernie from Fulton and Dennis Eberhard from Street Properties, but we just had a late sign-up who's in opposition, Syed Sude Kalajani. Okay, is that you, sir? No, I don't need you yet, but you're here to speak against this item, correct? You're here to speak against this item? Yes. Thank you. So we'll be holding item number 6. Item number 7 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 536 Rochester Street. We have Murray Chown here. Does anyone have any questions on this item? Murray, do you need to speak if we're prepared to carry it? No, I do not. Okay, is this item carried? Thank you. You're welcome. Item number 8 is a zoning bylaw amendment for 429 McLaren Street. Again, I have no speakers on this. Anyone have any questions? No? Is it carried? Carried. Item number 9 is a settlement of appeals to official plan amendment, 150 Natural Heritage System schedules. Does he have a motion? And Vice Chair Tierney has motions on this, but we have Ursula Mellons is the legal representation for Richcraft K&L, who's been working on these. And
yeah,
have you seen the motions? You've seen the motions? Do you need to speak if we're prepared to carry it? No. Okay, thank you. If it changes, we'll come back to you. So, Vice Chair Tierney, please introduce the motions.
Great. I'll just skip to therefore be resolved because it's just a technical switching of maps. Therefore be resolved that document 2 of the report be replaced with the revised document 2 of this attached motion. You can see a picture of it on the back of it.
So it's a switching of maps? Carried? Next one? Do you have another one, or just one? Just the one? Okay, so any other questions on this item? So, you're fine? So on the item, which is settlement of appeals to official plan amendment 150, natural heritage system schedules, as amended, carried? Thank you. Item number 10, Habitat for Humanity, Greater Ottawa Home Ownership Down Payment Assistance for 6208 Jean d'Arc Boulevard. I have Shelley Van Buskirk is here, and also Say, thank you. I have no speakers on this, and I'm just wondering if you have any questions. Does anyone have any questions for staff? No? So is the item carried? Thank you. So item number 11 is the Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Development Department 2019 Work Plan. And I just will say that Councillor Kavanaugh had told me yesterday that she thought she'd be late, but she wanted to speak to both of these, both 11 and 12. But what we did is we reached out to her, and she said that she was fine. So I'm do we need a motion? So I'm just saying that we have offered for her to provide written comments that we will put into the minutes. Okay? So on the Planning, Infrastructure, Economic Development, very busy department work plan for 2019, it's carried. And number 12 is the revised work plan for the new official plan. I don't have any speakers on this either. We may see some written comments from Councillor Kavanaugh, but I was led to, I'm not even going to say what I was led to believe because she didn't say it to me, so I'm not led to believe anything. Unless it's told to me. Okay, so on the item, is it carried? Thank you. Item number 13 is the 2010 annual report pursuant to the Building Code Act. That's Code Act. Sound like a picture. Kodak, blast from the past, old thing. And we have our Chief Building Official, Frank Badin, here. And anyone have any questions? I have no speakers. No? No, Frank? No speakers. So on this item, is it carried? Thank you. And number 14 is Councillor Leeper's item. It's another beautiful mural. Exemption to permanent signs on private property bylaw mural at 13 O'Mara Avenue. I have no speakers.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, you can, because I think I know what you're going to ask.
Just in terms of an update, we shouldn't be continuing to bring these to this committee. It's still staff work. How are we doing on modifying the bylaws such that these are permitted as of right?
So, Chair, we committed to deliver a report to Committee and Council in Q2 on a new process that would avoid all of this. We're on track for Q2.
Thank you. And I would just urge all of my colleagues this morning to support me in this mural application. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, no problem. Is that item carried? Thank you. Okay, so we go back to the beginning. I don't know. That was a close one, Councillor Leeper. So we're going to go back. We're going to have a presentation from our General Manager of Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Development on the 2018 year-end report. And oh, and for the record, I'll just read into the record what Councillor Kavanaugh sent. Comments to be read on behalf of Councillor Teresa Kavanaugh. The secondary plan for Lincoln Fields is a very important part of what we as a city can accomplish in terms of bringing in opportunities to work with developers, city planners, and our community stakeholders to reach our goals of creating a healthy, livable city. I look forward to working in partnership with the community, our city planning department, and RioCan. This project will be a positive development for Bay Ward and the City of Ottawa. That's great. Okay? Thank you. Anytime you're ready, Mr. Willis.
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to be back to you again to deliver our 2018 annual report. This is part of our department's regular annual reporting on how our use of delegated authorities and also our report to you on the volume of activity and major accomplishments for the year. With me is Charmaine Forgy, who is our Manager of Business and Technical Support Services for the department, and Andy resides assisting me. He's part of our BTSS team. He's assisting me with the presentation. So we've talked a lot about this, particularly with the launch of the official plan, is that our objective that we are striving for as a community is to be the most livable mid-sized city in North America. We've seen this before, and it certainly will be discussing that a lot more through the official plan process through this year. So because we're looking forward to looking at last year, I won't focus so much on that question at this point in time. The next slide is really a statistical overview of the volume of activity and planning services that we have accomplished in 2018. So we had over 1,000 planning applications received, which is a continuation of the upward trend that we've seen, particularly in the last 3 years. The building code services, as you saw with the chief building officials report issued about 9,400 building permits this year, which again is a good steady increase in the last number of years. And what's really quite significant is that that group conducted 112,000 building inspections, and that number does not include the steady 3 weeks of work that building code services basically stopped all regular activity this year after our tragic tornado event to inspect over 500 homes in Dunrobin, Arlington Woods, Craig Henry, and Greenboro. It's a vast effort that the entire building code services had to devote to in order to complete that work to assist homeowners who had damage in their houses. So I want to put a particular shout out to that team because it was an enormously intensive effort for them, and we're very proud of the effort that they did to assist homeowners. One of the questions that this committee has raised on a regular basis is work that we're doing towards continuous improvement in the program and expediting our process for approvals. We've identified 2 target areas in the past where we think we have bottlenecks in our process, actually 3. One was in the site plan program, and you and council recently approved a new site plan program that will help address those backlog issues. The second is our engineering process review, which is work that's continuing and ongoing, where we've looked at our engineering approvals process, particularly through plans of subdivision and site plans, and trying to find ways to alleviate bottlenecks in the process. And that is generate a lot of improved internal practices, not necessarily policy changes, but internal business practices that will help expedite the process. And we'll discuss more of that later this year because we have more work to do in this area. The other area that we'll be looking at this year is also bottlenecks in legal agreements as well. So the city solicitor and I have discussed this, and that will be part of this year's review. We often talk about major approvals, and I think the most significant thing is in response to council's decision, very strategic decision to invest in light rail transit, we are seeing the development community respond to that, and development applications are showing up in considerable focus towards our LRT system, and we've processed a number of very important TOD approvals this year, one in the East End at City Park Drive and one in the center at 900 Albert as well. So it shows that the marketplace is responding to our major strategic city building infrastructure investment. When we talk about city building infrastructure and essential public infrastructure for a city of 1 million people, we're very pleased that we managed to, council unanimously passed with no appeals, the rezoning for the new civic hospital redevelopment project this year, and I have to give kudos to the hospital for their very intensive public engagement process. They've been very diligent of trying to address the ideas, and I think we're now looking forward to the province announcing financial commitments to this project that will allow this essential piece of public infrastructure to be built. On the economic development side, the most significant piece of work in the last year was the 1 million square foot Amazon warehouse facility, which is under construction and will be opening this summer. Major job creation opportunity in the east end of the city, and also part of the new economy, and showing that Ottawa is at the forefront of providing service for that area. So this is a significant economic development and planning accomplishment. Probably one of the most, because it was an expedited economic development project, it was one of the fastest site plan approvals we've ever granted. Infrastructure services, and although it's not really directly related to the mandate of this committee, it is actually core to our department's efforts, is our infrastructure services group, which is responsible for the design and construction oversight of every city infrastructure project that's not a P3 project, whether it be parks, whether it be roads, bridges, libraries, community facilities, nursing homes. They are responsible for all of that. So they also run the asset management program to recommend prioritization of projects for renewal of our $42 billion million public asset program. Council has approved a project authority last year of $565 million in capital projects, and that led to 600 actual physical projects, and we also upped last year strategically our asphalt testing program as part of that program, which is essential for our quality control. That group was responsible for a number of really significant city building projects in the last year. Florida Footbridge, which will open later this year. You've seen the construction. It's a fun project to watch how that was actually built. A number of parks projects. I'm going to talk more about the Ottawa Art Gallery in a second. We managed to get Council and Federal Treasury Board's approval for the Ottawa Public Library, and now that's in the hardcore design process with one of Canada's leading architects. And the combined sewage storage tunnel, which continues construction as we speak. The north-south component of it is complete, and the east-west component, at last I checked with staff, it's very close to the University of Ottawa, and the tunneling will then go beneath the Rideau Canal in short order. And Council made a major priority last year of investing in road resurfacing, which is also a big, very accelerated program which the group had overseen. Elgin Street renewal, we're right in the middle of construction right now. That work has begun and is continuing, and that will be a major transformative project for the core of the city. We're very pleased with the opening of the Ottawa Art Gallery. I think you've heard the Mayor discuss the fact that the visitor attendance of this has far surpassed any expectations we would have had, and it's a beautiful partnership between the Ottawa Art Gallery, the Germain Hotel, and the University of Ottawa. The facility is very well used. You can see people in it for all kinds of purposes all the time, and it's a really fantastic addition to that part of the city. Computer technology is a very behind-the-scenes element of what goes on in the city. We launched a very important new program called Vision, which is our new project management software, which tracks all of our infrastructure projects, all of the financials, change orders, all of the information on it. It's a big repository of the information. It has come as a result of over a dozen audits over the years that have recommended a modernization of how we track and maintain this information. And it's a tool that's used both by our own staff and the contractors and consultants who work with us. So all the repository of information is complete, tracked. We have progress tracking on schedule and cost through this. It's all automated now. And part of it supports the monthly reports each of you receives about the status of projects in your wards. Our right-of-way heritage and urban design service was also very busy this year. I'm going to start with some of the lesser-known services because I don't know if it's always appreciated the fact that the city's chief surveyor actually is within this group, works for us, and the city chief surveyor did over 1,000 legal survey projects last year. Very critical component with particularly the rollout of Stage 2 LRT. There's an enormous amount of legal survey work. It also supports the real estate group on any activities they do. It also provides preliminary surveying for all of the engineering work we do, whether it be a road project in all of your wards or other site development project. The other group that I don't know that always gets a lot of attention is our GIS and our group that supports the backbone of the city's GIS. And a lot of the Geo-Ottawa information that many people see is a combination of work through our central SIPD IT group, but also our GIS team who populates that with all kinds of information. Some of the new storyboards we've developed last year, and they had over 1,500 drawing requests from departments all across the city. And I will also point out that in the response to the tornado, they provided an essential service to emergency response teams, providing data on hazardous utilities, all other information in the areas affected, and those teams worked around the clock to generate maps that you would see in all of the emergency response stations. The group issued over 1,400 right-of-way permits, and there's a report coming forward on our road activity bylaw very shortly. I think we'll talk a lot more about the nature of that work, but it's a very big part of what they do. In terms of urban design guidelines, which that group did, the major achievement of 2018 was the new high-rise urban design guidelines. That was a very important project that took a number of years to get to agreement and completion, and the team is shifting its focus, as you can see in our work program that was approved earlier, to low-rise next. The Spark Street Public Realm project is a fun project that is really about trying to liven up one of the main attraction streets within the city. It has both done two major elements. One is the temporary installations to block vehicular access except for service vehicles in the area, and that has changed the way that street feels. If you go there now compared to last year, you have far fewer vehicles on the street and during many hours of the day, and they are quite limited, and this is really important to really get that street life back. what we call the Sparkscapes pilot project, which is all the temporary furniture and play equipment installations, was very popular last summer and received some national attention. And these are pilot projects, and we're studying the effects of those pilot projects and how they were used. And this is a partnership with the BIA for the Spark Street BIA, the National Capital Commission, and Public Services and Procurement Canada. And this is input to the long-term public realm program that we've had public meetings on in the last month. The Byward Market is also, we started the Byward Market Public Realm Plan last fall, and that has had, we had very big numbers of public participation in that project. I think this is, people from across the city want to see our Byward Market thrive and evolve with time as a center activity, and we know that once the LRT opens, this will become so much more accessible for people because the LRT station is going to be on the doorstep of the Byward Market. Economic development and long-range planning had a series of initiatives. I'm going to talk about each one of them in turn. Ottawa Next Beyond 2036, which was the precursor of the official plan, was an important report, and that has been now led us into the official plan review process. We are very pleased with the results of our initial work on the R4 density and zoning review, and as a result of these zoning changes, bunkhouse development that would come after the effective date of this bylaw is no longer permitted in Ottawa. So this has been a very major improvement to the quality of life in some of our downtown communities. The Hard Rock Casino rezoning through the process was also the creation of a major new economic activity in the south end of the city, and that we'll see more of that development activity through the next year. And an interesting project, if you haven't had a chance to see this, would encourage each of you to try to get out to see it, is that we worked in partnership with the National Capital Commission to set up an autonomous vehicle test facility at the NCC's Greenbelt Research Farm. This, it was a very underused assets with about 16 kilometers of roads already there, fenced off from the community. So ideal conditions to test autonomous vehicles in winter conditions and all kinds of work. So our traffic services team worked with our economic development team to get that facility up and underway, and major research firms from across Canada, many of whom have their headquarters in Canada, are out here working and testing autonomous vehicle technology. Also, as a piggyback to this project, we are developing the Center for Open Innovation and Networking, which is really focused on a precision agriculture program, because if you're doing all of this tech facility on the roads, in the adjacent fields, there's an enormous opportunity to test autonomous technologies for agricultural equipment, and also new technologies for monitoring and sensors on ground moisture, nutrient levels, and the like. So this is where these two initiatives were piggybacking together at this really unique site in the center of Ottawa. So talking about groups their work isn't always obvious, our business and technical support services, which is the behind-the-scenes backbone for everything the department does, they generated 216 committee reports with staff that brought, I think you had about 200 of the 216 come through planning committee, but we have a very, very large number of reports that have to do, 165 access to information requests, and we provided 50 different training courses. We also had over 160 stakeholder engagement events through the course of the year for all of our planning initiatives, including 48 public meetings, 6 online surveys, which is, by the way, our uptake on online surveys has been quite substantial. We're finding as each year goes by, more and more people are really engaged with this idea of online surveys and 8 online consultations. And we also run a number of educational events, and we have an e-newsletter subscription base of almost 12,000 people. And our planning program, planning primer program, which has been in place for many years, remains really, 2007, remains very popular. We have requests all the time to continue to do this. It helps communities understand the planning process. It even helps people who are new to Ottawa, may be involved in development projects or professional services, helps them understand the Ottawa way of doing things. So it's incredibly popular, and we continue to offer it in high demand throughout the year, and we keep getting groups wishing us to offer more. and we revamped it last year as well. So we strongly encourage anybody who's seeing this, who has the opportunity, encourage you to share this with your constituents. We do have our online departmental newsletter, 12,000 people right now. We'd like to grow that base because it's a way for us to get information out, and the address is on the screen. As I said, if any of you wish to have something to put in your own newsletters to try to drum that up, we'll provide that too. So that's an overview of the departmental activities for 2018, councillors, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I was just wondering, you know, with, in the last part of your presentation, and thank you for shepherding such a very important and busy department through 2018. When you were talking about the increase in the online participation, which I think that we know that, I mean, certainly, I'm sure some people here still do householders. I personally never have done one in my 22 years, but I find that, you know, with the other tools we have and how people are reacting, whether it's Twitter or whether it's Facebook or whether it's WhatsApp or whatever they're engaging with, or your newsletters, whatever it is, the fact is more and more people are looking to this kind of ease. So I'm wondering, about, rather than hosting the same number of planning primers, would it make sense to offer one online as like a webinar?
So, Chair, through working with the Service Innovation and Performance Development Department, which has a new name as of June, which I haven't memorized yet, our IT technological people, we are actually exploring software packages that would allow us to do a lot more public engagement online. There are a number of preset packages. We just have to test them to make sure they meet our official languages requirements, make sure they meet legislative requirements, but we're testing and piloting a number in the next year.
I think the library does webinars. And so why would we not just use something like that? I mean, we have within our own organization or departments or, yes.
Thank you, Chair. We do right now have all the primers are online, and we do have some that are in video form, and we are looking to do more of those webinar pieces. The feedback that we have had from residents, they'd like to come together, meet other residents, and
Sure.
also have that. So we do have that option of the online.
Except that if we're not calling it a webinar, people may not be aware of that. And the people that are telling you that are the people that are available to come to those sessions.
Absolutely.
The people that don't have the time, that maybe after they, you know, struggle for an hour-and-a-half trip home on OC Transpo or whatever, get home, take their kids to all the things they take them to, get them into bed, and then maybe have a time that they'd really like to be learning more and participating more. I want to make sure that there's an opportunity for those folks.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll take that as direction.
And without having to create a new program on that, lots of people do webinars. Thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions? Councillor Brockington and then Councillor Leeper. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few comments and questions. Thank you for the overview. Certainly busy year last year, and I'm sure the work plan for this term and this year is no different. You touched upon the hospital. I just want to say, as the local councillor welcoming the new Civic into his ward, the hospital has significantly improved on its consultations and community outreach. I think it's what started off as somewhat rocky, that Councillor Leeper and I can attest to 4 years ago, is really now a well-oiled machine with respect to community engagement, so I'm glad you raised that. One issue I've raised in the past that I want to get your comment on is there's a misconception in the public that every single planning file that comes to your attention we approve, or that this committee approves in council. And I think it's important to provide the public with some context about the files that first arrive at your desk, those very preliminary discussions, the revisions they go through, the UDRP voluntary meetings, files that stop at that point, versus what actually comes to this table and goes to council. And so I'm wondering if you're able to, obviously not now, but as part of a sort of an annual update like this, give us real data about number of actual files you first receive and the amount of massaging and revisions that they go through before this committee even sees that. Because again, the misconception is that everything that comes to the city automatically gets approved, and that's not reality. And I think that's a valuable metric to provide.
So Chair, just really quickly, I mean, one of the things that Ottawa does more than most municipalities is we put a really concerted effort into pre-consultation through applications. We even involve community groups in a number of, as a pilot project in a number of areas, and a lot of files that probably are not supportable from our perspective stop at the pre-consultation stage and never proceed to an actual application. And it's hard to track that exactly, but we can go back and look at that. In terms of files and the work that the planning team does, our planning team are very dedicated staff, and they're working to try to improve every application to meet the objectives of the official plan that have been established. And so, as Mr. Herwire can attest, a lot of files, part of the reason they take time is the amount of work go on the back and forth we go to try to address community concerns, try to address our technical concerns, and make those projects better in the process. So we might be perceived as slowing things down, but that process actually improves the projects.
Thank you. So as far as your 2019 report to this committee, do you think that it would be possible to provide additional information on what I've just raised?
Chair, we'll go back and look at it. I'm going to have to see what kind of, we're going to a new technology on our planning application system too, and it may be that when that new system is available, that data will be easier to get and track. But I'll discuss that with Ms. Snedden and her management team to see what we can provide. It's because it is a good point.
Excellent. And the last comment I have, Madam Chair, is just regarding the tornado points that you made. You didn't mention River Ward. You mentioned all the other communities. The mayor in his State of the City address mentioned every community except River Ward. And I just want to point out that River Ward was one of the impacted wards, certainly not to the same extent as Dunrobin or Trent Arlington. Significant damage. The Quarry Co-op took a direct hit, which is right beside the Hunt Club Riverside Park Community Center, which I was in when the tornado came right by us. But there was a number of homes damaged that required city intervention, Red Cross intervention, and I just want to point out that, yes, we weren't hit as hard as other communities, but there was significant damage and people going through hardship as well.
And Chair, my apologies for not referring to that, because the councillor is quite correct.
Thank you. Councillor Leeper?
Thanks, Chair. A couple of years ago, we underwent a fairly extensive reorg at the city. And we reduced the number of senior managers. Our leadership team is 9 people now. One of the considerations that I raised at the time was, we continue to have a transportation chief, and we continue to have a planning chief. And I just want to ask you, what is your impression of how that relationship between transportation and planning, how has that evolved? How is that working for you? Is there anything we can do to help to make sure that they're even more tightly integrated? Are you seeing any problems emerge? How is the relationship between planning and transportation working, given the clear interlinkages between those two?
So Chair, organizational structures often evolve to meet business needs, but how we're organized at the top doesn't necessarily affect how things actually happen on the ground when staff work with each other. The transportation planning staff are co-located with the rest of the work team in our department. They sit on the same floor, they sit right next to each other. Our business and technical support services actually provides them support on public consultation activities. Mr. Smith spends all kinds of time in Ms. Chee's office. Ms. Snedden has set up an interdepartmental working group to make sure that we take high-level issues that are repetitive and actually address it. I'm quite satisfied that because basically, I can only think of 2 times in the last year Mr. Manconi and I even needed to talk to each other about an issue. That means everything is being dealt with at an operational level. So from my perspective, we make it work just fine.
No, I was curious. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bray?
Thanks. Well, just to follow up on that, how can we get better coordination with, from the planning side, with Phil Landry's group related to traffic calming and new subdivisions? Because in fairness, that's still not happening. Like last year, Phil and I and his team, we walked a subdivision that's like 18 months old to figure out how to drop another 50 or 60 grand in brand new traffic calming measures that frankly Minto should have built when they built the roads in the subdivision. So how can we get their eyes on those plans with recommendations before they're planned and then or while they're planned and before they're actually built, and then accepted by the city.
So Chair, I actually happen to agree with the councillor entirely. This is an area that we had an update meeting on our Building Better, Smarter Suburbs recently, and we talked about a couple of areas that haven't, the intent's there, but it hasn't fully translated from operational practices. This item was raised, and we are working on it as a team because it does need to improve. I think it's an issue, and Mr. Herwire, who has on-the-ground experience, may want to add to this. I think it's just a lag issue, that plans that were previously approved and built, they'd already reached a level of approval that we weren't able to apply it, but those ones that are going through the system now, it's being picked up more. Mr. Herwire, do you want to add to that, since you have...
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I believe the General Manager is correct. Currently, traffic calming, as per previous direction from Council, is to be looked at in all new subdivisions and built in to the extent possible. I don't know the specific example you're referring to. It could have been approved sometime previous to...
So I guess I'd like to understanding to the extent possible, because some of the best traffic calming actually requires either geometric or physical changes at an intersection, whether it's raising, et cetera, and then that changes overland flow of the water, so your catch basins have to move and all the engineering that they've done. So how do we do the traffic calming? How do we understand where we want to put the traffic calming before they've spent all this money on engineering, and then we get this, they come crying to us, oh my God, it's going to cost us a fortune to change all the engineering, we're going to delay closings and all this other stuff, knowing full well that we're going to face all sorts of crazy complaints, 6 months after the thing opens.
Yes, that was an issue previously in terms of servicing proceeding in advance of that happening, but in the last, I'm going to say 12 to 15 months, a geometric plan is required that shows the curbing, the raised intersections before any permission is given to put in pipes. So they're now together. Yeah.
And anybody else? No? Well, thank you very much. And I like the fact that you are, coming forward and talking. I think that sometimes we just kind of take it for granted and we're not really taking the time to have it in a public session. And it just, we know that we're busy. We certainly know we're busy. I know how busy the department is, and but I think that when you really start to talk about it, all the things that you've achieved, it's pretty remarkable. And the upcoming year, well, this year, is not going to be any different. So thanks for your work, for yourself and your team on behalf of all of us. Thanks. Received? Thank you. Okay, so the next one is 3930, zoning bylaw amendment for 3930 and 3960 Riverside Drive. I see a lot of people in the audience, and I just want to make sure that in case you came in late, you know that item number 3 has been deferred. So item number 3 was the zoning bylaw amendment for 10 Oblates Avenue and 175A Main Street. That one has been deferred until April the 11th. Is anyone here for that? If you are, just know we're not going to be discussing it today. So this item before us now is the zoning bylaw amendment 3930 and 3960 Riverside Drive. Where's our planner for this? Kelby, Loden, Unseth? This is your first time? It's like your inaugural meeting? Welcome. It's a big file. I just said to, this is off the record, but I just said to Don Herwire, I said, with that name, where are you from? And at the same, when I was saying Wales, he said Saskatchewan. It just is such a different name. What? The nationality is Norwegian. Never, I never occurred. No.
They're all in Saskatchewan.
It's none of our business. It's just kind of a neat name, so I probably killed it. How do you actually pronounce your name?
Yeah, Loden Unseth.
Oh, okay. Good. So thank you for coming up here. We're not having a presentation, but we do have people in the audience that have come out to speak. We have Councillor Brockington, who is here, and we have the applicant represented by Michelle Taggart. So the first person to come up to speak is Tanya Mushka. Tanya? Have you been here before? So you go to the first seat, right there where it says public delegation. It's the very first chair, right? And then there's where the microphone is. You're going to there's like an oval disc. Press that, and the light will turn red. There you go. Now move it over right as close to the front of your face, because it doesn't really project that well sometimes.
Okay.
So you can actually take this and move it a bit more. Okay? You have 5 minutes for everyone else that's going to be speaking. That's the rule that we have. Thanks very much.
I will probably take my 5 minutes. Good morning. Thank you, Chair Harder and committee members, for this chance to speak today. As a resident of the Quintero neighborhood near the site, I'm asking that this committee not approve this zoning change, and furthermore that it alter the status quo by eliminating the as-of-right zoning for office buildings. The applicant's held this land for 20 years and has a right to develop it. However, circumstances have changed, and I believe this site is not amenable for all the uses requested. The situation seems to be one where a decision to delay development over these many years is resulting in a risk transfer to the commuters and the local residents. I'd like to talk a bit about risk. The Planning Services report is silent on risk in its section on page 16. I respectfully suggest that unmitigated safety risk would be incurred if the zoning changes were to go ahead and if the offices were allowed to be built. I'm sorry. Can you take that off my time, please? At the last community open house, some numbers were verbally provided by the applicant team where they forecasted additional traffic for afternoon peak hours for a mix of hotel, retirement residence, car dealerships, and apartments, which would range somewhere between 240 cars added to 684 cars added if an office building was included. This order of magnitude is not a marginal contribution, but will significantly impact intersections operating at capacity. There's no public transit directly to the site, and apparently no immediate plans. And this is important for a seniors residence if it goes in. More congestion will no doubt lead to more accidents. Adding an intersection and an extended turn lane, as has been talked about, to access the site will not fully offset the negative impacts. Another safety risk exists in Quintero on Kimberwick Crescent, where cut-through by drivers is happening now. Many families live there. There are sports events like soccer, and young people cross there. There's every reason to believe that more drivers will be induced to cut through and thus increase the risk to pedestrian safety. Critically increased traffic in an already congestion and high accident area puts safety at risk, and the risk of material loss goes up. The net impact is an unmitigated risk, what I believe is beyond an acceptable threshold. Also, in my view, the zoning changes requested do not fully align with a couple of aspects of the official plan and policy. Firstly, the official plan section 4.11.2.1 states that for traffic, roads should adequately serve the development with sufficient capacity to accommodate the anticipated traffic generated. This is not the case for this site. Secondly, this application is not aligned with the 2014 provincial policy statement, policy 1.67.4, which states, promotes a land use pattern, density, and mix of uses that minimizes the length and the number of vehicle trips. I suggest that this application does not merit approval because of these gaps with policy. Another problematic aspect would be more surface transportation noise from the traffic caused by high-density development. This does not align with section 4.11.2.7 of the official plan that states development should be located and designed to minimize the potential for significant adverse effects on adjacent sensitive uses related to noise. The scope of the applicant's study unfortunately did not include the neighboring area of Quintero, a part of which runs along Riverside Drive. Quintero residents should not bear the cost of retrofitting their homes to attenuate increased noise caused by the density of this development. It's proposed that any committee decision be conditional on doing the transportation noise assessment for the Quintero residences, including creating sound barrier fencing along Riverside. In conclusion, approval of this application would allow for land uses that generate high traffic. This increases the risk to safety and property within this high collision area. The Planning Services report did not address this in the risk management section. The applicant apparently has an as-of right to put offices on the site, greatly adding to traffic and associated risk. It's proposed that a zoning change be made to exclude this from the buildings on this site. The applicant has an as-of right for retirement residence and residential care facilities. And herein lies a very good solution for this site in my view. That is the establishment of a long-term care facility instead of other traffic-generating land use. Traffic added by that type of facility would be minimal by comparison. As we all know, there's a shortage of long-term care spaces with long waiting lists. Some of the city hospital beds are currently occupied by persons who cannot get a long-term care bed. So there's a domino effect occurring from this development, maybe
your time, but I'll give you 15 seconds because
a wonderful opportunity exists to establish a long-term care facility on the site, working collectively with the applicant and with the counterparts in City Hall working on the healthcare side. I strongly encourage the committee to examine the rationale and means by which this could occur. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I was listening to what you were saying about a noise study, and I think that there were some noise studies that were carried out. I asked our acting director, Mr. Herwire, and so we were talking about that, if you saw me talking. But on the long-term care, I'm not a transportation expert, but as somebody who has had people in long-term care and been on the boards of long-term care, I would think that the amount of traffic would increase, one, because you have to have more staff for long-term care that are coming and going at different shifts, and they're there, for a 24/7 period, but also because of the number of family members that visit people in long-term care. Do we have any data on something like that?
Just speak to that for a minute. The suggestion is to put the long-term care facility there instead.
I know. I understood that.
I certainly can't comment on whether there's a need or desire to locate a long-term care facility there. We could get back to you with what the typical trip generation would be for that. Don't have that offhand.
Yeah, but again, okay. And Mr. Simpson, I see you in the audience. You don't have that kind of information, but maybe somebody else does. Thank you. Does anyone have Councillor Brockington? Hang on a second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming down today, and you and I have certainly shared a lot of email back and forth. Can you just help illustrate for my colleagues what Riverside and Hunt Club looks like around 4 o'clock in the afternoon? With your microphone.
I can, and I thank you for your comments in the planning services report. They were right on. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the traffic goes down past the bridge and probably up to what's called Revelstoke Drive. And on a worse day, it goes all the way back to Walkley Road. In the wintertime, I think we're probably talking right close to where Canoe Bay is going to go. So it is quite difficult. Now, the other aspect is that people who want to come off of Uplands, because they may have come around or they want to get onto Riverside to get down to Riverside South, for example, they can't get on to Riverside because, as you know, when there's a light turning, everybody pulls up right to the edge. So they don't have enough room to actually even turn on. So there's two kinds of traffic, not to mention the IBM employees who are, I think it's IBM, who are right beside there, can't actually get out. So there is a traffic issue, and I think everybody knows it. It is an inconvenience. It's the question for transportation people to determine what are those standards and how they need to be improved. However, to me, the key here is the safety side. I think we need to talk about risk. There's a lot of, it's not just sitting in a car. People get hit, and people can be hurt. And there's loss of traffic, so loss of injuries, some kind of injuries, and loss of material loss, because insurance claims go up for all this stuff. So really what's happening is some of this will be underwritten by the insurance companies at the end of the day. So it's more than just an inconvenience, I think. It's a serious decision that you're making today.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Brockington? Well, thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.
I'm going to call next Mike Gorman. Mike, are you here? There you are. Come on up.
Yesterday, I sent an email, care of Melody, which included 2 charts. Has everybody got copies of those charts?
It's coming. Matt's coming to put it on the screen for you.
Oh, can we put it on the screen? Okay. Okay.
So you have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I speak to you today as a resident who, with my spouse, has been living near the area in question since the early 1980s. We've been witness to vast green spaces transformed to commercial development. Let's consider the staff report released March 18th and comments from Councillor Brockington in the context of 2 vital issues: traffic flows and impact on the site itself. So I see chart 1 is up there. This is a Google map of the intersection. You can see in red, and the previous speaker just alluded to this somewhat, this is typical traffic patterns where you can see in red, especially during the afternoon, sometimes in the morning, sometimes even on the weekend to a certain extent. So eastbound all the way up to, frequently up towards Uplands, westbound to where the Lowe's shopping center is. You notice even Prince of Wales is affected, pretty much up to the railway. And also, as was alluded to, as high as Revelstoke on Riverside Drive itself. Kilometers each direction. Also observe that, marked in yellow, Uplands Drive and Paul Anka Drive, busy residential streets, are prime targets for driver shortcuts, be they be going south or east-west. This increasingly means safety concerns for local residents like us. According to the official plan, Riverside Drive and Hunt Club Road are transit priority corridors. One of the 3 term of council priorities is identified as improved safety for road users. What about this project enhances this goal? Councillor Brockington commented that the intersection is currently one of the worst in the city and rated F failure for ability to move traffic. How does this project improve the situation? The traffic impact study was based on estimates of vehicles entering or leaving the proposed access, but little attention was paid to the disruption of the southbound traffic flow, which was just discussed before. The response of a project spokesman at the public meeting held last June to my question about the ripple effect of the additional traffic was, use public transit, not an option, sir, not there, or live with it. Thank you, sir, for your concern. Can we please have chart 2? Oh, okay. I hope this delay doesn't count against my time. We have chart 2?
We've paused your time.
Pardon?
We paused your time. Your clock is not rolling. Can you put it up on the screen?
Oh, okay, there it is. All right. So this is obviously a Google Earth picture of the intersection. Observe that the green space has a wide front on the Rideau River. The staff report notes this portion of the river has been designated the Rideau Canal National Historic Site of Canada, a Canadian Heritage River and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. However, only the top half bordering the river is protected. The lower half is subject to what the development allows for as an environmental protection zone buffering it, whatever that means, from the river. The Cultural Heritage Impact Study, in connection with the city's official plan, advises prohibiting land use that produces noise, fumes, or dust. Good luck. Clearly, in addition to the proposed structures themselves, major construction will be necessitated to change the land contours given the grade slope of 10 meters or more and up to 6 meters below the roadway level. Deemed warranted signals will be based on traffic volumes, apparently not on safety, which a partially hidden intersection connecting to high-speed traffic should factor in. Given the surroundings and given the term of council priority of supporting a sustainable environment, should the maximum height allowance be 14 to 18 stories? Anything of such heights will stick out like a sore thumb. What a wonderful image this would register as visitors' first impressions. Should such a property be transferred to feature yet another apartment building, retirement residence, hotel, or car dealership? Former City Mayor and Ward Councillor Jim Durrell was quoted recently in the Ottawa Citizen to say that Ottawa should do more to take advantage of the waterways that help define the city, that not enough has been done to make them bustling public places such as cafes or boardwalks. Now there's a positive approach to respect this World Heritage Site and still contribute to the city's tax coffers. And that maybe outdoor sports or training facilities could also do that as well. Clearly, meaningful compromise is called for, especially if we want to have a more organic legacy for this last pristine quarter of the city. Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We actually, I don't know whether everybody noticed the email that we received this morning from Paul Johannes. It just came in overnight. We've had some comments on conservation and that sort of thing as well too, just in case you didn't get a chance to see that. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Gorman? Councillor Brockington?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. And Mr. Gorman, thank you as well for coming down, and you and I, of course, communicate frequently as well on a number of issues. If this committee and council approves this application, what do you think the main issue with respect to the transportation network needs to be addressed? What to you is your #1 priority that you could suggest or recommend?
You're saying should the project in a fashion similar to this proceed?
If it's approved, what would be your #1 recommendation with respect to the transportation network?
Well, I think we would have to provide something in terms of a public transit option. Right now, there are no buses going down north or south on Riverside Drive in that area, 0 buses. And once an hour, buses go along Hunt Club. So if one wants to give people a bit of an option, such as people living there, and maybe ones who might be interested, then that would certainly be important. And the other thing is I can't stress, I think, enough how vital it is to make sure that if some kind of an intersection has to be created there, keeping in mind that it's only an entrance on one side, southbound side, northbound side would not have access to it. And given the fact that that road as it is right now is a road where many drivers are basically, well, let's face it, sometimes gunning it a little bit to make the Hunt Club light or to turn or whatever the case might be. They're going pretty fast. And that intersection is actually in a little bit of a gully, it's a bit of a low spot. So when you're going over the hill, you don't at first know whether there's going to be traffic there. So as I say, safety would be paramount. They'd have to make absolutely sure that it's created in such a way to minimize problems as much as possible, because it's the old expression, if you put it up there, that could well be an accident waiting to happen.
Anyone else? Well, thanks very much, Mr. Gorman. Next up, we have Peggy Pratt. Peggy, are you here? Welcome.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, we have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard on this issue. I, in fact, live right in the middle of all of that, and on the previous slide, my house, I'm sure we could see it. So every day I experience what happens in this area, and I've lived in Riverwood for the entire time for over 20 years. And I would echo the concerns of the 2 previous speakers who are very well informed and well spoken on all of the ripple effects that this development would have. No doubt there will be some positives that will come from the development of that area. However, the concerns about safety and traffic are of paramount importance. The intersection there is noted, I believe, by the city as one of, if not the most significantly dangerous and high collision intersections in the city. it's just logical that the development is going to make that even worse than it is. There does not seem to be adequate consideration or solutions for how that would be addressed at that intersection, at the intersection, as well as where the traffic would come onto Riverside from that development. And indeed, as it's already been stated, people in where I live are very concerned about the traffic that goes on Kimberwick, because people cannot turn onto Riverside. They then think it's a great idea to go across Riverside through Kimberwick so that they can turn right onto Riverside. And this goes on every day, particularly in the winter. As it's already been stated, sometimes it takes me 20 to 25 minutes to get from Walkley to the entrance to my development on Malhotra Court. So that's an inconvenience that's not great. However, the greater concern is the safety at that intersection for both pedestrians and drivers. And things like car dealerships and so on might be fine, but that is a lot of people going in and out of that small space on a daily basis.
Anything else?
No.
I just have a question, because you're talking about, so the new intersection that's going to be built, what will that do, if at all, anything to ameliorate what your concerns are? I'm asking, I guess, the transportation folks.
Sorry, I was just chatting here.
So the concern from Ms. Pratt was that, well, let's face it, we all know that it's very busy. Riverside Drive is extremely busy. I mean, Prince of Wales is extremely busy. Riverside, South, and Barrhaven have like 135,000 people, right? So, at least, in Manotick. So, the new intersection that they're putting in, that they're paying for, is that going to do anything to address the concerns that Ms. Pratt had?
Well, one of the items that we had included with the, I guess the report was talking about upgrades to Riverside Drive southbound. One of the options was expanding the right-hand turn lane southbound, which would increase the queue length for cars, allowing better flow through of cars going southbound through Riverside across on Club Drive. So that was one of the options that we had included and discussed quite thoroughly with the applicant as well.
Councillor Brockington?
To Ms. Pratt, first of all, Ms. Pratt, thank you as well for coming today. Will you confirm for the committee that the issue that particularly impacts your neighbors is the following, that when Riverside backs up for quite a distance northbound, these are cars that are heading southbound, what happens is people, to leapfrog over the cars in front of them, will turn into the residential community, which is directly north of this property, drive through the residential community at high speed to leapfrog all the cars that are on Riverside, to come up the most southern tip of your subdivision to get back into queue. Will you just confirm that that is the reality?
That's correct. They do it both through Riverwood and then also over on Kimberwick. So there's two places there where people tend to want to get a little bit of an advantage. And Riverside is not, Riverside is a pretty quick street. It's not like they're not going quickly there. And with the amount of building that's happening in Manotick, in particular, and Riverside South, even without this development, it's bad enough and getting worse, and now we're just going to make it even worse without a good solution to handle it.
Just looking at the map, hang on a second. I guess it's not going to connect with anything there. No, but people are coming through. I'm just looking at Kimberwick. Have you, so this is something that you're witnessing already? People.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, people will, as the crow fly, wherever they can, to get through. And so often we're putting no turn lanes between 7 and 9 on Grenfell at Woodruff, and it happens on, I would say, all of our busiest roads in the city.
And the IBM employees, the IBM is right there on the corner, so those folks, the IBM building is right there, and so those folks don't have a way to turn, so they will out onto Riverside. So they'll go out, as they should, over onto Uplands and Kimberwick, and, you know, it's logical.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? No, thank you. Yeah. Well, I have Michelle Taggart now. Michelle Taggart? Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of Planning Committee. My name is Michelle Taggart. I'm here representing the proponent, St. Mary's Development Corporation, which is an affiliate of the Taggart Group of Companies. So you've already heard the overview from staff. You've heard from the community. I'm going to keep my comments brief. The hot button issue on this file, obviously, is traffic. Council approved a rezoning for this site back in 2010, which was for a 650,000 square foot office development. That zoning currently exists as of right. So that project would have generated 800 vehicle trips per hour at the peak hour. The project that is before you now is a mixed-use development, and that will generate around 230 trips in the peak hour, so between a quarter and a third of the traffic that is currently permitted as of right. I want to thank staff for their commitment to work on this project. It has been a long road, and staff were very diligent in making sure that every aspect of this project was carefully considered. And we support the staff recommendation as written. I have one item that I wanted to clarify. So as we've been discussing, the Hunt Club Riverside intersection is one of the worst intersections in the city. It's rated with an F-. There are 6,000 cars that travel through it at the peak hour right now. So this project will add about 180, which is less than 3%. So if you have 33 cars lined up, one of them will be interacting with this site. So staff have asked Taggart to construct a 150-meter extension of the right-hand turn lane from Riverside onto Hunt Club, along with other roadway improvements. And while we're happy to assist in the remedial work and pay our fair share through development charges, even offering to front-end it, this is a major intersection and it has major problems, and funding for improvements to that intersection should be paid through development charges. So if you have any questions about this or any other aspect of the project, I'd be happy to answer.
I see you have Brian Casagrande with you too.
Yes, this is Brian Casagrande from
I think it's a
FOTEN.
good time for Vice Chair Tierney to talk about the motion that he has been working on with regard to development charges, and then I'll have a comment, if need be, from Mr. Herweiler.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then I'll go to questions of
So I guess this is some work that was going on with Mr. Willis, and there may be some wordsmithing, but be it resolved that the right-of-way intersection identified under further improvements in the transportation section of the staff report related to Riverside Drive between Kimberwick Crescent and Hunt Club Road be identified as a project funded through DC account related to the intersection control measures, traffic signals, roundabouts, and turning lanes.
Mr. Herweiler, comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the time we've had to review the motion, we certainly don't have any objection in principle. We would like to tweak the wording a bit. The account identified is incorrect, and we'd like to specify the improvement that Ms. Taggart just referred to in the motion, so we could have that for council.
So that's great. So on this motion, we'll go ahead and you can do your wordsmithy stuff prior to. Thanks.
Procedurally, whatever works, we're happy to assist.
Okay, all right, thank you. Questions, Councillor Brockington?
Just on that note, if I can, this is going to come out of a pot that everyone contributes to, and not necessarily that we're asking Taggart to pay for it, because this is a different strategy I'm learning of right now. Can you clarify this, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's my understanding. It would come from a citywide account that funds work, and it would be subject to availability, but I understand Taggart would be prepared to front end, assuming it's eligible, and perhaps Mr. Simpson Anything to add?
I want to know what infrastructure projects Taggart is going to pay for out of their pocket with respect to sidewalk. We've talked about this. This is the first time I'm hearing this, that they're now not going to be paying directly for this. So how is the right-hand turn extension, sidewalk improvements, who's paying for this?
Madam Chair, I think that's what we'd like to clarify between now and council. Like staff's understanding, the new intersection, the sidewalk, the other improvements identified in the report would continue to be paid by Taggart. It's just the right turn lane from the new intersection to Hunt Club that they feel is provides citywide benefit and would like to be considered as eligible for development charge funding.
So I'm going to yield. I want to hear my colleagues' questions and comments first, but then I'm going to come at the end if I can.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Okay, yep. Councillor Shirelli, who else?
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Taggart may have answered part of it, but I had intended
Can I just interrupt for a minute? Does anyone have any questions of Michelle Taggart or Brian Casagrande? Should I? I'm asking, because if you don't, I won't have them stay there. Maybe I should stay there just in case,
Just
right?
stay.
All right. Okay,
You
sorry
never
to
know what's gonna
interrupt.
happen.
Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Shirelli.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Just as an aside, I always wondered how you get an F minus. Is F
What did he say?
is fail. Anyway, so I guess it's F plus
moved to
grind it in. You can grind it in. Anyway, so my question was, people tend to look at change and say, oh, I just don't want it. But under our system, there are many different things that are allowed, and some of them may be a lot worse than applications in front of us. So I think it's important for residents to understand what they could get if they don't get this. So I wonder if you could outline a couple of the uses that could go in there as of right, and what their traffic counts could be as of right relative to this application.
All right, so different uses.
You have to point the microphone closer.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the question. Different uses that could be permitted on the site. I don't have the actual traffic numbers myself, and maybe some of the other members here could elaborate after, but different uses for the site could allow amusement center, bar, broadcasting station, cinema, parking garage, parking lot, place of assembly, production studio, nightclub, theater, and I mean, even more. So the actual traffic generation of those uses, I don't know. Maybe perhaps Wally or Colin, you can elaborate. But
for anyone who's been around here
for the site are quite vast.
So anyone who's been around here for any length of time knows that at least half of those are significantly higher traffic generators. And yes. Is that correct?
So one of our transportation people should jump in here, I think.
Yeah, I think, just before Colin or Wally jump in, I think it was fair to say that there is a significant office component that is permitted. There are other uses that would significantly add to traffic and peak flows, but generally, yes, what you're asserting is correct.
All right. Okay, thanks. That's it.
Okay, no, you can't. It's great. Who are you?
I'm Mark Baker from Parsons. I prepared the transcript.
Okay, so maybe you can whisper in your client's ear, and if somebody else asks a question, she can state it, but the way if you had registered, it would have been a different story, but I stick to the same rules all the time. Okay, so you're free to do what you want. Is Councillor Gower.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just hone in a little bit, make sure I understand the rating, I guess this F rating that's been given to the Hunt Club and Riverside intersection. Was that a result of the traffic impact assessment for this particular development, or is this a broader, transportation or planning study that arrived at that grade?
Thank you for the question. The level of service F is what's existing today. And that is analyzed through traffic signals group when they review traffic signals. The traffic that causes this level of service isn't going to go away anytime soon.
My colleague reminded me it's F minus, not F, but with the changes that are being proposed to that intersection as a result of this development, what's the anticipated rating that we would get to for that intersection? Do we move from an F minus to an F? Do we move from an F to an E minus?
It will not improve.
It will not improve. And so I guess my next question is, because it comes up in my ward and I'm sure many others, and maybe it's what Councillor Leeper was anticipating with this question to Mr. Willis earlier, at what point can, as planners or as a city, can we push back on development when we're seeing a worsening or an F intersection? At what point can an F intersection be grounds to reject an application, or does it factor in at all?
I believe, I'm not too familiar with it, but there is a system in place where there's funds available depending on the level of the intersection. I'm not sure if you can address that.
Mr. Chair, through you, Councillor, there's a number of different things that we look at when we look at development impacts. That includes the overall multimodal level of service, and I think with this application, with the implementation of a new concrete sidewalk on the west side, including a cycle track, there's benefits to the other modes as well. You know, the long-term vision for improving this intersection is the Stage 2 Trillium Line extension to Riverside South, as well as the widening of the Airport Parkway, including Leicester and Bank Street, to improve capacity in the north-south direction. Both of those projects are underway and part of this council or next term of council. You know, we have other projects that are protected for and identified in the official plan, but they're not within the long-range financial plan. But certainly, we're protecting for another crossing of the Rita River at the extent at the base of Fallowfield Road over the Rita River, as well as future road widenings in the area. But those projects aren't within the immediate, you know, funding areas.
Or in the immediate future. So I guess I just want to make sure I have with clarity. If a traffic impact assessment for a future development is done and it comes back as an F, that's not grounds, or the city could not refuse that development because the road infrastructure or an intersection design is not complete. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councillor. It's an indication of delay. As long as the geometric designs are done safely, then we typically proceed.
Okay. I don't have a problem with the land use being proposed, and I wish I had the grounds to push back on developments. I don't think this is a single development, you know, it's not this single development that will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and I wish I could, out of principle, vote against this on the traffic, but it's not a grounds that the city, under the Planning Act, has in order to reject the development. I think it's disappointing, and it's an issue that comes up again and again, and we're talking about you know, transportation infrastructure that could be years, sometimes decades to get there. And I think it's a real problem in these communities. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dudas?
You know, Councillor Gower spoke to a lot of what my questions were. I would like to ask too, I mean, Colin, maybe you can jump in here. I don't see anybody from OC Transport, but maybe you can weigh in. In terms of the transit access that is currently available for residents in this area, and are there any plans to bolster that?
Yeah, as identified by the previous delegation, Hunt Club and Prince of Wales are both transit priority corridors, so they're protected for signal priority and queue jumps for transit buses, but it's not within our affordable network. There are longer-term plans, so with the fullness of time, the extension of the Trillium Line and the further development of the transit plan, you know, that's the long-term solution.
So, I mean, and Councillor Gower spoke to this too, you know, this intersection is particularly
awful. I've been through it many a times, but there's intersections throughout the city where we're either in failure or we're on the brink of it. And, you know, I find this is a bit of the definition of insanity, right? Is we keep doing the same things over and over and over again and anticipate a different outcome. And, you know, the comment that this traffic isn't going to go away anytime soon, it kind of shirks the duty of the city in terms of planning and being proactive and making sure that some of these long-term initiatives aren't, you know, on the forefront of our decision making. You know, this development itself I don't have any objections to, and I'm pleased to see that it's going to put less traffic on than some of maybe the initial, plans for this site. However, it boggles my mind as to why we're intending to put more traffic into an intersection that is even less than a failure. And I think that's you know, something that we as a city need to really take on in terms of planning for this. If we know that we're going to anticipate high density development in a site, why are we not putting in all the tools that we need to anticipate that far in advance, as well as transit? And I get that stage 2 is coming, and I know that will change our landscape, but maybe I'll put to you that we need to look at how we can get more people on buses. I'm happy to see that there's a cycling infrastructure coming, MUPs, things like that, but maybe a greater emphasis on that when we look at developments of this nature is you know, city in partnership with development, we need to start looking for that. So, you know, I'm having a really hard time with this particular application, not for the merits of the application itself, but just more so of the lack of planning as a city. And I'd really like to see if we can emphasize maybe some more of the transit opportunities in the short term, as opposed to looking to long term.
Thank you, Councillor Dudas. Does anyone, are you going to have any questions of the applicant? That's the applicant, yeah. Okay, great. Okay, Councillor Brockington. So just before you do, anybody else? So Councillor Brockington, this will be questions and wrap up.
So I'll ask my question to the delegate, Ms. Taggart. Ms. Taggart, you're aware of the cut-through traffic issues in the community that directly abuts this property, and you want to be a good corporate neighbor. I know you want to be a good corporate neighbor. We've had discussions recently and in the past about making a contribution, particularly for traffic calming initiatives. There have been a number of initiatives already undertaken. I don't want people to think that there hasn't been anything already. We've tried a number of initiatives thus far, but some of the more successful ones probably will cost a little bit of money. So will you confirm today that you would be willing to make a contribution as part of the site plan approval process?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, indeed, we'd be willing to contribute to traffic calming in the neighborhood.
Okay, I just wanted you to confirm that today. So, Madam Chair, I have no questions, additional questions for the delegate, but I do want to provide comments.
Okay, so thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
Back over to you.
So, you know, using the camel's analogy, the camel's back is broken now. We're not waiting for this to be the final straw, but you know, River Ward is centrally located. It has significant number of north-south arterial roads, which are used predominantly by commuters that live south of Hunt Club Road. Whether it be the Airport Parkway or Bank or Riverside or Prince of Wales or Fisher or Marival. These are the main north-south arterials that our friends to the south use to get to the Queensway or get to the major employment centers north of River Ward. And Riverside is no different. It is a significant arterial road which shuttles tens of thousands of vehicles a day. And as long-term residents have stated, as they've seen our community and city evolve over time, have we seen more development, particularly on the Hunt Club Parkway, the commercial development, the additional residential development. People are concerned about the chasm between planning and transportation. In fact, I was asked to amend my comments in the staff report because I was critical of this chasm between transportation and planning. And for the lay people, for the average resident who lives beside these types of developments, they're saying, city, we don't understand why you would consider a planning proposal. It may have strong planning merits. I support mixed-use development in the urban core on 2 arterial roads. That makes sense. But you can't do that in isolation of the current challenges that the community faces. And that's why my residents, they're not NIMBY folks. We've had a sign on this property for 20 years. For 20 years, there's been a massive sign that says, future home of a senior's residence. And we knew that development was inevitable. We knew that this corner would be developed. And we want to see smart development. And we want to see development linked to a solid, multi-use transportation plan. There is no transit service that shovels on Riverside. There's a strip of a bike lane that will be built connecting to no other bike lane, but this strip fronting this property will have a sidewalk and bike lane. So that's not a solution. And so Mr. Simpson is correct that LRT Phase 2 will take some pressure off because it will serve Riverside South. And the closest arterial road to our east is the Airport Parkway, which is currently single lane. That is in the queue to be widened. That will take some pressure off. But to Wally's point, this intersection will continue to be enough. It cannot handle the volume of traffic. And so in the grand scheme of things, the net increase of traffic, when you compare it against 40,000 vehicles, is small. But again, it goes back to people can understand, well, if it's already a failure, why are we continuing to approve more and more? That's what people can't wrap their head around. So, I have no problem voting against this on principle at council. I don't have a vote here today, but I do want to reiterate that. Is everyone in the community supportive of the components going in here? No, there's pushback on car dealerships. It's ironic we're having a conversation about car volume and we're putting in a car dealership here as one of the components. But overall, people are reasonable that they understand the options for development here are quite large, but they're concerned about the current and future challenges. The local community association, the Hunt Club Community Association did provide written comments. They are not supportive of the application amendment or the application that's been put forward, and I want to raise that today. So, I mean, this is a key intersection in the south end of my ward, and we're all aware of the traffic concerns, the lack of public transit, the lack of bike lanes or other modes. We're building this so people can drive to and from it, and I think in principle that is wrong. There is an existing issue, as has been identified by delegations, about the cut-through traffic on Kimberwick, and I will continue to work with the community and staff and with the proponent here on some, I think, elevated. We've tried the painted messaging, we've tried the yellow flex sticks. There are some other options that can be explored, and we're looking to do that as well. And Councillor Meehan could not be here today. She has a family issue to address, but she'll speak at council, but she has some significant concerns as well. She represents the area to the south. So I guess I look to staff. I mean, the lengthening the right-hand turn lane, I do welcome that. To the staff's admission, that will not fix the problem. Have we exhausted all options? Is there anything left that as a city we can look at? We know that LRT2 is coming, but that's still a number of years. We know that in the long-term plan, the widening of Hunt Club is possible for dedicated transit lanes. That's sort of on the books, but long-term. Is there any, I mean, we've also lengthened the left-hand turning lane from cars coming from the south that want to go on the bridge. We've installed signage to indicate to motorists you're entering a high collision zone. So the city is aware and has done some things, but this intersection continues to be either in the top 3 or the #1 highest collision, thankfully not serious collisions, but still high for collisions. Is there anything left? Like, I've thought about giving direction, writing motion, but if there are no options left, And even under some line of questioning from my colleagues, while you still say it will still be enough, what remaining options are there?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. Riverside South will be widened from 4 lanes, I believe, to 6 lanes. That can accommodate the traffic southbound. There has been improvements done on Hunt Club Road, westbound left turn lane, and that should reduce some of the rear-end collisions that are occurring at this intersection. Other improvements may be down the road. Like Colin mentioned, there's an additional bridge to cross the Rideau River. That would definitely help. There's the Earl Armstrong Ring Road. That would definitely help. The widening of the parkway. And there's a few other projects that are being considered just to alleviate some of the congestion.
I appreciate that. I mean, even conversations with OC Transpo, their issue is, again, not sufficient volume. That's the issue. It's not that they refuse to have the conversation review the matter. They need people to ride the bus in order to put the bus there. And again, even if the residential that's being proposed is built, it will not be enough to substantiate a bus. But that doesn't mean we keep trying and keep promoting other modes of transportation. Madam Chair, I think you realize my frustration and concern. You know the intersection well. I know that when Hogsback Road is closed for 16 months, I'm about to have a major public meeting on May 13th. Colleagues, anyone who lives basically south of Baseline is going to be impacted by this, and Riverside is going to be an absolute nightmare for quite some time, in addition to what it is now. But again, I think, colleagues, you're aware of my concerns. I have no hesitation voting against this. I think there are some significant issues here with planning and transportation, and if we are going to be approving matters on a planning perspective, you can't ignore or not come with sufficient plans to deal with the transportation network. So that's sort of my angle, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And I know that you worked really hard on this file, so I appreciate that too. But the majority of the conversation really has been around how awful it is. And you could say the same if you look at the intersections. In the top 10 are Woodruff and Hunt Club, Prince of Wales and Hunt Club, Riverside and Hunt Club. I mean, those 3 are in the top, 4 in the city. And we plan to widen Prince of Wales, and we plan to make changes, and we plan to do, the Southwest Transitway, continue it so that it's taken out of the Woodruff mix north of Hunt Club. And all these things are going to be factors, but they all are driven by money. So we're working on the new transportation master plan, and we all know that we've got to be very, very good to on that, because for those of us in suburbia where we've had such massive growth, yesterday we were asked to pay extra for to bury the hydro lines on Montreal Road. And you know what? Why I object to that? I mean, I voted for it, but you know why I object to it? Because all those streets, Elgin, et cetera, Queen Street, et cetera, all of those streets, look at in the work plan for what we're doing in Rideau Ward this year alone, no matter where it is. And yet, what gets bumped? Where we're growing the city. Where we're growing the darn city, which puts a further burden on all you people that are here in Riverside South. It's not that we like to add to the traffic on your roads. We don't have any options. We just don't have any options because we delay the Airport Parkway. We delay, we don't even have the Greenbank realignment. We've got houses that are built with this 400-meter space in the middle of it that's just dirt and gopher holes where 2 bridges are supposed to go across, okay? I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. I mean, Councillor Blais and how hard he's been fighting for roads to get out to where all the growth is coming from, and yet all of these people are paying for all of this other stuff in the center core, and we get squat. So with the transportation master plan, I'm really happy that Councillor Blais is in charge of that this term. We know we got lots of work to do, and there's those of us on this committee, like Councillor Leeper, Councillor Blais, Councillor Hubley, myself, who are working, and Councillor and Vice Chair Tierney, who are working on the development charge bylaw, and we'll have like a mini one of that comes through. It's all important pieces, but today we have before us the zoning bylaw amendment for Riverside Drive, and I want to thank all of you folks that have come out to speak. We know that we're going to have that motion that was introduced by Vice Chair Tierney will be fleshed out and before us at council. So on the item, so we're not voting on that motion at this point, but it will go to, it will rise to council. Yeah. The amendment. Sorry, it will go to council. The amendment will go to council, okay? And only because I think that, you know, there's not a question that, you know, we would hope that some kind of investment like that will help the situation, but the situation is what it is. So on the zoning bylaw for Riverside, what number is it? I haven't got my glasses on here. 3930, said I? 3930 and 3960 Riverside Drive. Carried? Okay. Right, and again, knowing that that motion will be going, that we've already got on the books, so it'll be before us. All right.
Just to be clear, so the spirit of this motion is going to council, you're just going to finalize?
It is going. The only thing that's different is the development charge number, the file number.
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And it will go the 10th, April 10th to council. Okay, thanks everyone for coming out. The next item that we've held is number 6, zoning bylaw amendment, 5331 Fernbank Road. Again, Laurel McCrate is here. We have no presentation on it. We do have Syed Asudeh Kalajani. Come on forward now, sir. We also have Carl Ferney from Potan and Dennis Eberhardt. And so I will call you up if need be. This is in Councillor Hubley's ward. Hi, Laurel.
Hello, Madam Chair. If I may just flag for the members of committee, we have identified just, you know, just this morning a potential issue with the map that's included in the report. We will be clarifying that, and if need be, bringing forward a technical amendment to the council. The issue is related to property lines that have consolidated through land titles but aren't shown as one individual block on our system.
Councillor Weaver, you're good? Yeah? Okay. Welcome, sir, and thank you for sending your notes this morning.
Thank you very much.
You have 5 minutes.
Oh, I think I will use just 3 minutes of that. I'm Mohammed Asudeh. We are living where, if the amendment is approved, a gas bar and a car wash will be located just behind or very close, at most 50 meters from behind our yard. And this is what we didn't know when we bought this house 2 years ago. And this, I think any development should provide a better environment for those living there. And I don't know how rare is this situation, or is it common to, when we bought this house, we asked the neighbors, we asked for the application of the land, nearby land, and there was no sign of this, that the application was something else. Now we are facing this, that a gas bar and a car wash is just behind our wall. If there is, in the previous sessions, they changed the distance from 6 meters to 7.5. And I am here. Of course, the owner of the home is my daughter, and I and my wife who has experienced cancer, living there, and I'm just here to express our concern to see whether it is possible to just do something or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Councillor Hubley?
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming down today, and also I believe your daughter participated in the public meeting that we did on this issue as well. There are gas stations all over the city in very similar designs or setups, including in our own ward. As was discussed at the public meeting, the one at the corner of Eagleson and Hazeldean, the houses are right there beside the car wash and the gas station, and has been for, I think, 10 years or more. So it's, while I understand your concerns about living near a gas station, as far as health concerns, there's no reports from public health that living with a gas station nearby is going to create a cancer cluster or anything in the area. We're not seeing that. If there was any evidence of that, I'm sure staff would not even consider the application. But the alternative, for the benefit of this resident as well as for my colleagues, what was discussed at the public meeting was the alternative to the gas station was going to be a fast food outlet with a drive-through. And the majority of the residents at the public meeting said they would rather the gas station than the fast food. I think was the feedback we received there because of the volume of traffic that a restaurant would create right behind your house. So, thank you.
And the idling of the vehicles.
And the idling of the vehicles would be a lot more prominent in you know, if it's a, I won't name a restaurant, but any fast food restaurant there, as compared to this design here. If you get a chance to look at the design, the planner Laurel's done a fantastic job on this. There's a queue lane for the car wash. There's a wall there. I believe the final report, there's no change to the setback. Are we back to 7.5 for setback there?
Madam Chair, yes, that's correct. Originally with the application, the applicant had asked for relief from the interior side yard setback from the required 7.5 to 6, but through discussions with the councillor, the community, and the applicant, that request was removed, so we're going forward with 7.5 as required by the minimums in the business park zone.
So when you get into site plan, you know, there's some things that you can do, obviously, with the noises and that come from a car wash, and they're way quieter. I mean, I have some instances where I have very similar situations, sir, where there already was a neighborhood that they fit into a corner gas station that had a drive-through that has a Tim Hortons, that people were very afraid of their property's values and all that. None of that has come to play. And there's a convenience store, and there's, I mean, it's a busy, small area, but then I have one down the road on, these are both on Woodruff Avenue, so similar to, well, busier than Fernbank, but not in the future. And they have, it doesn't have a drive-through, but it has a car wash, and how they've been able to deal with that. There are things that can be done, including with landscaping and that sort of thing as well. But the setbacks haven't been changed.
At the site plan.
Yes, the site plan.
Piece, yeah. And that was well explained to everybody at the public meeting, so I think...
so how do we make sure that all of those people, but in particular you that came down here, are involved with that process?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, at the public meeting, we had confirmed that a site plan application had yet to be submitted to the department, but I made a commitment along with Councillor Hubley that I will notify these people via email that an application was submitted so that they could be involved in the process. As you know, we don't do a direct mail out for site plan control applications. We put a sign on the property, and some people just might drive by them, so we made a commitment that we keep the notification list alive for the site plan to involve them.
Perfect. Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor, is it for the resident?
For staff.
Okay, does anyone have any questions at all for Mr. Did I crucify your name? How do you say your name? Asudab Kalajani? Oh, good. Okay, well, I think we have no more questions, so thank you for coming out today, sir. Well, you can't, because I have to have the same rules all the time for everybody. There's always something somebody wishes, but I bet you can tell your counselor, okay? Now, gentlemen, you asked question of staff. Do you need to come and speak still? Only for questions? Okay. The answer is no. Councillor Gower?
It's a question for staff. I'm just curious, when there's a applicant who's trying to build a gas station, is there a provincial environmental approval process that they need to go through? Is any staff aware how that process works?
There is provincial requirements for an environmental compliance approval with respect to the stormwater. It doesn't necessarily deal with air emissions or things like that, but for stormwater there is an environmental compliance approval required.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so on this item, the zoning bylaw amendment for 5331 Fernbank Road. Is it carried? Thank you. Okay. I think that's it for held items. Do we have any notices of motion? How about inquiries? Any other business? Okay, we're adjourned and I'll see you back here. Are we getting another break? Wait a minute. It says April 25th. Oh, are we getting another break? Did you see how excited I was? Because we've just been moving things till April the 10th.
Or April 11th, sorry.
So we'll have to correct the agenda to April the 11th. I'll see you then. Thank you.